The Hawkins family purchases Anita, a robotic assistant or a synth. Unknown to them, she was part of a group of sentient synths led by Leo, the son of the synth creator David Elster. However, Anita was illegally modified, leading to her losing her memories. Overhearing his wife Laura talk about someone named Tom, Joe grows suspicious and ends up using Anita's adult options to copulate with her. Noticing Anita's odd behaviors, the eldest Hawkins' daughter Matilda investigates the synth and happens to meet Leo online, though she hesitates in reuniting him with Anita. Another sentient synth named Niska kills a man in a brothel to escape. Detective Karen Voss investigates the case, but she secretly is sentient synth as well. She struggles to conceal this from her partner, Detective Pete Drummond, who's living with her after his wife replaced him with a synth. With the help of Dr. George Millican, Leo discovers that their father left a program, but he needs all the sentient synths to run it. After attacking humans who were destroying synths in an anti-synth smash club, Niska escapes and meets up with Leo and her synth brother, Max. Leo tells her that their father didn't destroy his work when he died, but hid the life program that will create more sentient synths in them. Niska smiles, thinking that the humans must accept them if they make more sentient synths. However, Max fears that they will shun them further. Leo reassures Max that their father meant for them to find the program. However, they need to find Mia, which is Anita's real name. Leo forbids Niska from joining them as she's wanted for murder. Although she refuses, she agrees to stay with a human that Leo recommends. Meanwhile, Matilda asks Anita if the name Mia rings a bell, but the synth says it doesn't. Joe and Laura arrive and task Anita to do the ironing. When she leaves, Joe tells the children that their synth is old and illegally modified, so they plan to return her. Their younger daughter Sophie and their son Toby protest, and Matilda also wants Anita to stay for her to uncover who she was before. Joe is baffled because he secretly wants to get rid of Anita to hide that he took advantage of her. Laura also sides with the kids because she's grown fond of the synth. Meanwhile, Pete barges into Karen's room while she's charging. Luckily, she unplugs herself before he sees her. Ecstatic, Pete shows her the newspaper. Later, the two report to the station while the news about a killer synth has apparently been leaked. As detectives of the case, they're summoned by the chief. Unbeknownst to Karen, Pete leaked the story to the reporter he previously injured in exchange for getting the charges withdrawn. At the chief's office, Pete and Karen are ordered to calm the press and ensure that Niska won't cause further casualties. Before leaving, Karen asks the chief about the Smash Club incident. When he says it's unimportant, she investigates the case on her own. Elsewhere, Niska takes a cab to the address Leo gave. She realizes that she got injured at the Smash Club, causing her side to leak. Shortly after, she arrives at the address and meets Dr. George Millican, one of the first synth creators. His synth, Vera, detects that Niska is a synth, but the latter denies this. When Vera leaves, Niska admits that David Elster made her. George understands that she's a sentient synth like Max, who visited him with Leo recently. Meanwhile, a curious Matilda contacts Leo again. With her parents arguing over Anita, she answers the door and finds that her father has already called the manufacturer to return the synth. Taking the risk, she quickly drives away with Anita to take her to Leo. When Leo finally sees Anita again, he embraces her, but Anita doesn't recall him or Max. Right away, Leo and Matilda try to decipher the codes that might trigger Anita's consciousness. However, this causes her to glitch. This upsets Leo, so he looks into Anita's eyes, hoping she'd remember who she is, but to no avail. Elsewhere, George questions how David created consciousness, so Niska shares that he made her using 17,000 pages of unique code. She rants about how people who know about them see them as a threat. George admits to thinking that way too. He shares that when he discovered that David wanted to make sentient synths, he questioned him about it. Offended, David removed George from his future projects. However, George can't deny that he's looking at the greatest creation man has ever made. He then mentions the message Leo showed him, and Niska fiercely claims it's the key to the future. George comments that David made Niska combative, but she argues that her experiences shaped her. When he asks about these experiences, Niska dodges the question. Elsewhere, Pete gets notified that Simon, his wife's assistive synth, is at the end of its rental period. He meets with Jill to tell her about this, but she doesn't want to return Simon. She guilt trips Pete, saying that she relied on the synth when she couldn't rely on her husband. Meanwhile, Karen meets with a man who has a video of the attack at the Smash Club, where she sees Niska. At a laboratory, Hob, a scientist who's after the sentient synths, presents a recording of Niska and Leo's call to synth manufacturing executives. Although the executives believe that Leo Elster died when he was a boy, Hob suggests that he's alive. He adds that David succeeded in creating true AI, and more are out there. Learning that the so-called life program needs all sentient synths, one of the executives commands Hob to destroy Fred, the only sentient synth in their custody. However, Hob seems torn by that order. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, Leo gives up on bringing out Mia's memories. As he tears up in frustration, he demands Matilda to take Anita back home. Despite this, Matilda immediately goes through Anita's diagnostic log when they arrive home, still believing that Mia is in there. Toby arrives just as Matilda discovers that the adult options were used. She accuses Toby of it, and the commotion alerts their mother. When Laura learns what happened, she scolds Toby, but he denies the accusations. Suddenly, Anita enters the room, and Toby realizes the truth. Before Laura calls the shop to confirm the diagnostic logs, he admits to sleeping with Anita. Laura gets disappointed, so she sends him to bed and says they'll talk in the morning. Not long after, Joe comes home, and Laura tells him what Toby said. Nervous, Joe suggests that he talk to their son about it instead. The next day, a jogger runs into Odie, George's old synth whom he set free in the woods to avoid being recycled. The jogger reports this to the police, and Pete receives the call, recognizing the synth as he's handled Odie when he glitched before. However, when he goes to pick him up, Odie has left. Meanwhile, Leo dreams about being underwater and Anita. After waking up, he walks out, so Max tries to go with him. However, Leo says they're going separately because he's terrible at looking after them. Max reminds him that they're family and he's always tried his best. However, Leo only screams at him and leaves. At home, Joe talks to Toby about Anita, but his son asks why he had to lie about it. Joe's silence confirms his speculations, so the teen yells at him and leaves. Meanwhile, George helps Niska nurse her wound. She twitches from the pain, surprising him. Niska claims that true consciousness isn't possible without suffering or pleasure. She clarifies that she doesn't fear death, thus making her stronger than humans. However, the man counters that she can't truly live without fearing death. Suddenly, Pete visits George to discuss Odie, so Niska grabs a pair of scissors for protection. When the detectives start searching the house for Odie, Niska hides. Just as Pete is about to open the room where she is, Vera arrives, distracting him. He asks her if other synths have visited lately. She mentions seeing Odie before he disappeared but doesn't bring up Niska. With this, Pete merely finds George for not returning Odie when he was ordered to. He then comments about George's affiliation with David Elster and sarcastically remarks about the recent news about a killer synth. When Paul returns to his car, he finds a poster for an anti-synth rally. Later at the office, Karen tells Pete that Niska is posing as a human, surprising him. She asks him to find her discreetly because Hob might interfere. That night, Pete goes to the anti-synth rally where the speaker asserts that humans are losing their purpose because of the synths, and now they aren't even safe anymore. Meanwhile, Joe admits to Laura that he copulated with Anita. He excuses that he was drunk and Anita is just a machine, but this only infuriates Laura. She then realizes why Joe wanted to get rid of Anita. Joe then redirects the problem toward Laura and someone named Tom, whom he thinks she's cheating on him with. His wife only grabs an overnight bag, screaming at Joe to leave, so he does. Meanwhile, Niska sees a photo of Hob and David, learning that they once worked together. She also discovers that she's been dubbed as a killer synth in the newspapers. At the lab, Hob shows the executives a burnt lump, which is supposedly Fred, claiming that it's the only way to be sure it's destroyed. The next day, however, Fred wakes up in Hob's house. Hob faked his death because he wants to continue David's work. He also tells Fred about the life program that David placed in all sentient synths. He claims that he doesn't want to hold the future back and that synths shouldn't be feared. Meanwhile, Laura and the kids are still shocked by the recent events, though Sophie thinks her father is on a work holiday. When she leaves for school, Matilda asks Laura who Tom is. When she refuses to answer, she assumes that her mother is also cheating. After spending the night at his friend's place, Joe tries to talk to his son on his way to school. When Toby points out that what he did affected them, including Anita, his father gets confused as he still thinks of her as a robot. However, Toby insists that they care about her before walking away. Meanwhile, Leo hallucinates Mia and the others before collapsing. At George's house, Niska is vigilant about the man now that he knows she killed someone. However, he's sure that she won't kill him because she likes him, although she doesn't state it. George explains how part of being human is non-vocal communication, which is why he also knows she regrets what she did. Niska justifies her crimes, and although she wants to seem ruthless, George can see her guilt. Suddenly, someone rings the doorbell, and it's Odie. At home, Toby regrets confronting his father, thinking it'd be better if everyone thought he was the creep instead. His mother assures him that it wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, Fred doubts Hob since he has armed men guarding the house. Hob explains that Fred must agree to help him before he trusts him. Fred then recounts when his father gave him an injured fox. He healed the fox and freed it, but David doubted him. He couldn't understand why he underestimated him until he realized that human minds couldn't comprehend that their own creations could surpass them. With this, he knows that Hob underestimates him too. Suddenly, Fred punches through the door and chokes the guard from outside. He then takes the man's gun and shoots Hob and his men with electromagnetic bullets to escape. Meanwhile, George tries to fix Odie. Niska wonders why he cares for something something that can't love him back. George explains that Odie reflects the love that he once shared with his wife, thus he's important. Niska offers to help fix Odie since George can't keep his hands steady. When Odie powers on, she smiles but quickly hides it. Elsewhere, Jill becomes intimate with Simon, but the synth is predictable and it doesn't excite her. Meanwhile, Laura worries because Matilda hasn't come home yet. Anita mentions that Matilda hangs out with Harun, so the mother asks her to drive her to his house. True enough, this is where they find Matilda. However, she doesn't want to go home until Laura tells her who Tom is. Elsewhere, Niska watches George care for Odie, so she asks if David ever cared about them. He comments that David only ever cared about his work. Even his son and his wife, Beatrice, weren't really interesting to him. Suddenly, George asks how old Niska is, and she says she's 9. He laughs, saying that she's only a child. Niska laughs too, but then she falls silent, recalling that David didn't always treat her like one, though she kept that a secret from Leo and the others. George realizes that David used her for his sensual needs, so he sympathizes with Niska. He holds out his hand, promising to do anything to help her. Niska takes it as she slowly trusts him. Elsewhere, Laura takes Matilda to a park where she shows a childhood photo of her and her brother Tom. He died after getting hit by a car, and Laura blamed herself because she was supposed to be watching him. Her mother never forgave her, and Laura admits that her mother is still alive and that she visited her recently. Her mother wished Laura had died instead, convinced that she let Tom die on purpose. This caused Laura to cut her mother off, so she went through her adult life claiming that she was an only child with both her parents dead. Matilda asks why she still visited her mother, so Laura explains that she felt like she was losing Matilda. She hoped that if she made amends with her mother, she would also understand her daughter. Matilda reassures her that she'll never lose her. On their ride home, Mia suddenly breaks through Anita, gasping in the backseat and forcing Laura to pull over. Mia tells Matilda that Anita's personality identifies her as a rogue code and is trying to delete her. She asks Matilda to tell Leo that she's still there, but he needs to look outside of her head. Just then, Mia returns to her usual synth behavior. Laura asks who Leo is, and Matilda replies that he owned Anita before. Elsewhere, Max passes by a memorial for a deceased boy. In one of the cards, he reads that he's now in God's care. Desperate to keep his siblings safe, Max prays despite doubting God's existence. Just then, Matilda barges into their hideout, looking for Leo. Max reveals that he left, but he knows where he probably is. Meanwhile, Laura explains to Toby that Anita is conscious. He's dumbfounded and asks if his dad knows, to which Laura says no. Max takes Matilda to their old rendezvous point, where they find the unconscious Leo. Seeing that he's almost dead, Max immediately tries to save him. When he tries to revive Leo by plugging a cable into him, Matilda freaks out, so she demands an explanation. Meanwhile, Pete reports to Karen that a cab driver found blue blood on his cab and claimed that his passenger matched Niska's description. This excites Karen, saying that she could kiss him. Suddenly, Pete receives a call from Jill, saying that Simon is going haywire after she got him modded. When Pete arrives to rescue her, Simon says his wife is playing hard to get, which makes it difficult for him to penetrate her. Enraged, Pete smashes the synth's face with a crowbar. When Simon finally powers down, he tells Jill that it's safe to come out. Realizing that the synth is damaged, Pete offers to cover the cost of a new one. However, Jill only tells him to leave. Meanwhile, Karen interviews the cab driver that Pete mentioned. She confirms that his passenger was Niska, who was dropped off at Queen's Park. During this, Toby goes to his dad to reveal Anita's true nature, but Joe doesn't believe him. At the hideout, Leo regains consciousness, and Matilda tells him that Mia still exists, but she'll only explain if he tells her what's going on. Leo refuses, but Max convinces him to trust Matilda. With this, Leo shows his memories to Matilda, which are digitally stored because he's part synthetic. His mother was mentally ill, so David created a conscious synthetic caretaker for the young Leo, which he named Mia. This explains that Mia wasn't Leo's lover and instead played a motherly role. After Mia, David created more sentient synths, Fred, Niska, and Max. When Leo was 13, he died after his mother kidnapped him and drove them both into a lake. Mia saved him, but it was too late. To save him, David put synthetic parts into Leo's body. After this, he became closer to his synth siblings. One day, David flipped, saying that Leo was responsible for taking care of the others. After he sent them away, he killed himself. Matilda sympathizes with Leo and Max, so she decides to reunite them with Mia. Meanwhile, Joe goes to their house to apologize to Laura again. He then asks what Toby meant about Anita, pointing out that people will be looking for her if it's true. He uses this and the news about a killer synth as excuses to get rid of Anita, but Laura is convinced that their synth has emotions. Matilda arrives with Leo and Max, explaining that he owns Mia, which angers Joe. However, Laura tells him to leave while Leo works on recovering Mia. Hours pass, and Leo can't recover Mia. Matilda suggests that her root code might be translated to pure sensory data. Hearing this, Toby and Laura smile over Matilda's cleverness. Leo tries this, and she's correct. Anita suddenly gasps, and Mia returns. She immediately embraces Leo and Max, happy that they're finally reunited. After thanking the Hawkins family, Mia nurses Leo's wound. Laura then learns that they're being hunted by people who don't want them to exist, but the sentient synths only want to be free. The mother worries if her family will be safe, so Leo assures her that it's them that those people want. Leo plans to keep moving and find the others, but Laura offers to help. Meanwhile, Pete tells Karen about the recent issue with George. She's surprised that he's Dr. George Millican, who also lives in Queen's Park. Later, Karen considers telling Pete that she's a synth. Just then, he knocks on her door, saying that he'll sleep now. Suddenly, Karen compliments him, implying on sleeping together. Although he hesitates, he gives in to her kiss. Meanwhile, Fred calls Leo and says he's free. He's not being followed, nor does he have any implanted tracker. With this, Leo and Max set out to pick him up. Mia wants to join, but Laura insists she stays until they return with Fred. As Leo and Max leave, Joe calls the authorities. After Karen and Pete have done the deed, she says she's leaving and might not return. This is why she wants Pete to know that he's her favorite person, and she wants him to remember that. Pete gets weirded out, but he agrees anyway. Suddenly, she reveals her charging port and her blue blood. Realizing what she is, Pete runs away. Elsewhere, Leo and Max get pulled over by a cop. As Leo deals with it, he finds Hobb and his men arriving, so he drives away. They get cornered, so they abandon the car, but Max can't keep up because he's low in power. When they reach the bridge, Max decides to sacrifice himself so Leo can escape. Leo warns that he'll sink in the water and die, but Max replies that if he dies, it means he lived. With this, he allows himself to fall into the water. With no time to mourn, Leo escapes while Max accepts his fate, taking comfort that his family will soon be together.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.